It's the Awake Space with Laurie Rivers. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations moving into action. And it's the perfect week to talk about action as we have the new moon in Pisces on the 18th, the sun ingressing into Aries with the spring or vernal equinox, and Mercury stationed for direct on the 20th. It's interesting as we head through mid-March now that the Ides of March have passed and we are moving towards the end. It gets more contentious. Don't worry, there will be some relief at the end of April. I know, she's chuckling. You're like, wait a minute, don't do that to us, Lori. This episode, we're going to talk about the new moon in Pisces. I'm going to include part of the recording I did for magazine subscribers from the March issue, an article I wrote about what woke astrology actually is. What does it mean? That's my website where you can find offerings from my astrologers, Damien, Shelby, and Susie, in alphabetical order, and why we do what we do to help people evolve in this lifetime, to help people grab hold of their consciousness and create fulfilling lives, even when the outer world is going bananas. And speaking of bananas, the file from the live stream where I told the banana story got lost in the Patreon upgrade. They upgraded or updated the app for Patreon where I host the Awake Space community. And there were some very sad members who wanted to hear the story. So, due to popular demand, I told it again. And it's a little bit of Laurie lore. And it's fitting for Pisces season because it involves not being able to remember something because I was in Amsterdam, but I didn't imbibe. It was a contact thing. And I was 18. So it's a pretty funny story. So you can hear that at the Awake Space while I talked about the new moon and went through some of the 2026 year ahead information because Taryn asked about power outages as a potential in New York. And I actually have those for April, brownouts, blackouts globally, having issues with power. So, if you are a magazine subscriber, remember everybody has access to the 2026 predictions and prep that I did with you guys. I'm recording from home because that weird weather I predicted for this week, last week, it hit us. As Matilda, Medium Matilda, and I often lament when we make predictions and they impact us because we're like, whoa, wait, hey, it's not supposed to hit me. Well, it did. It did, and it was way too cold to take Malcolm out. It just really impacts his hips. So we're recording from home. It's late. I'm tired. You can see, and you might even notice the static with my hair because you don't even want to see me. Have you ever put your hands on a Tesla coil, like the ball, the electrical ball thing? And my hair just shoots straight out and sparks fly out my toes. I know it's not supposed to, but it does. It happens. It was a very rude thing. I got shocked as a kid. But yeah, so we are looking at what is coming up for this third week of March. And it's going to be a little wild. There's rumors about a certain head of state and whether they're here or not here. And I'll talk a little bit about my predictions for this part of March. I'll read a little bit from the 2026 year ahead. And I'm just going to say, anybody who's an astrologer who says, oh, I see it in his chart, they're lying. You don't really see someone's demise once in a while, and it's really rare. And the reason why for a human being, that's not as impactful to you as you would imagine. It is usually much more impactful to other people than yourself. So I'll talk about that as well. We're really going to focus on this new moon because it's a doozy and it's powerful, and it's a doozy in a good way when you can pull back your focus and bring it inside. So that and more here on the Awake Space podcast. So whether we're going to work, whether we're folding the laundry, whether we're doing a hot guy or a hot girl work, whether we're hitting the basement because of tornado warnings, or trying to stay warm in a blizzard, or getting ice packs because it's hot, because the weather's all over the place. We're going to do it together. Get your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your Red Bull, get your H2O, because we're going to walk through this together. All right. I'm going to film this a little differently. Normally, I film this in segments, but I don't know. It's harder and harder to make it work that way. You'd think the video editing platform that I use would understand that more than one show is filmed in segments, but alas, no. So I do have to say, my preference for stinky cheese and all things France, because I'm a francophone. France was our number 2 country last week. France was our number 2 country. Number 1 was the United States. So Australia, you're in 3rd place now. Come on, share it with your friends. Oh gosh, it's crazy this week. Just pulling up. Also, how about that Firefly? It's an animated series. I know some people are disappointed by that. I'm actually not. I like a good animated series. I think there's a lot of potential and possibility with that. I am a big fan of Firefly. In fact, if you remember, I did a TikTok using the theme song saying what I expected to happen in 2026. Mm, And we did have that illuminating and very intense event of the United States and Israel bombing Iran at the end of February. Back to the Firefly part. My dog's name is Malcolm Reynolds, and it confuses some people. They'll be like, "I thought your name was Rivers." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't own him. He's my boo. He has his own last name, Captain Malcolm Reynolds of the Starship Serenity." That because when the day I got him, my son was with me, and he sat on my son's lap, and he was so regal and commanding the way he sat and surveyed everything out the windows. And he came with the name Malcolm, and I was like, "Well, that's it. It's Malcolm Reynolds. He's a starship captain." So there we go. Had a great workshop in your natural income path on Saturday, even though we had Mercury retrograde happening. So I had some tech snafus, but the class was really good. The next workshop I'm offering outside of a Patreon, because March 21st, astrology crew members were doing the natal aspects workshop on Mars. So aspects from and to Mars in the astrology chart. That's going to be a fun one. That's where I just rattle off. There's a lot there. If you're in the astrology crew and you've been wondering, like, how do I get started with the astrology class library? Because there's like 40 hours of stuff. Start with the sun, do the planets, sun through Pluto, and then do the houses. The signs are included in there. So they're included in each workshop. So I think you'll enjoy that. We're on to natal aspects. So yeah, been pretty fun. So it's a wild week. We have that new moon. Now, in the outer, new moons tend to not be super dramatic in general, right? Because they're beginning energy. But this new moon is sextile Uranus. So it could be interesting. I think that's going to lend to some more interesting weather as we head through the end of the week. And that could be wild temperature changes. It could be big storms at sea. And the one thing I haven't heard anyone talk about is the environmental cost of what's happening in the Persian Gulf. Because I got to Bahrain in 1991 in April, which was about 2 months after the first Gulf War had ceased. And the oil fires were still raging. And the environmental quality, like these were in Iraq and Kuwait, these weren't surrounding the Gulf. Okay. As those oil refineries are all over the place. Um, and it rained oil and it just the air quality was so bad and there was so many chemicals in the air being carried by the wind that there were a lot of health problems, even though um, official channels said, oh, I remember the headline on the paper, no major health concerns, nothing to see here. And there was a lot to see there. We do the same thing here. It's easy to point fingers at governments, but when you look at most governments, they do all about the same thing. And so I never forgot that. My kids grew up with those stories. And that's the one thing I keep thinking of is the air quality and the difficulty for people just breathing, not to mention the worry about water supply, food supply, but just the environmental factors. And that's not going to help any of us out globally. Again, I bring back Gustave Flaubert's book, A Simple Heart. So many people act like the main character, Felicite, who believe that when it rained in Paris, it must be raining everywhere. And you think if it's not happening where you live, it doesn't impact you. But we live on a small rock floating in space. And our atmosphere is not an isolated thing. So all those people who are climate change deniers who are like, well, it went to 100 degrees here. And oh no, we're facing a blizzard in March. There's no way that's, global warming. And I think global warming was an unfortunate term for PR's sake. I think climate change should have always been the term being used. And yes, the climate has changed naturally, and we could be in a natural time of climate change, but human activity has certainly exacerbated things. And anybody who says differently and goes to, oh no, it's global cooling because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, you want to mince words, that's fine. And in fact, I was arguing with someone years ago, almost 10 years ago now, who was on and on about, it's the solar minimum and blah, de, blah, de, blah after the solar maximum. And I mean, I am a mother and a Cancerian. And I'm going to tell you, I don't care what started it. We need to be aware it is. I don't care what the cause is. I mean, I do, because if we're contributing, why don't we stop that? So I don't care who started it. I want it to end. We can't turn it around right now. We have to mitigate. The scientists, like I paid attention as a teenager in the 80s and as a young woman through the 90s and 2000s. This is playing out the way they said it would. This is not new. This is not all of a sudden. We were given opportunities to turn it around, and the oil industry said, F you. So if you're someone from the oil industry, F you. Okay, I doubt you are. I doubt you're listening to me. And if you're like, Laurie, I needed a job, come on. There's other jobs. Go work for a solar company or a windmill company, because that would really piss the orange monster off. So let's talk about, I know, I'm on wine. She's spicy. So the moon in Pisces, it's the new moon happens at 28 degrees. It'll be in the evening hours, about 6:15 or so p.m. Pacific, 9:15 or so. I don't have the exact time on me, but later in the day. It doesn't happen in the morning. And when we're looking at the intentions we want to set, now, first, let's talk about intention. A lot of times people don't understand that when you set intentions, what you're doing is you're setting your focus. This isn't about the kind of intentions that pave the road to hell. Oh, I'm going to do that someday. That's not an intent. I intend to do this, and then you don't. No, no, no. It's about setting focus. Your establishing an energetical focus point. Okay. So just like my rings are energetical focus points, they all have a job to do. Okay. When we set our intentions, you want to write them down by hand. Okay. I just don't think typing does the same thing. In fact, neuroscience proves me right. I don't care if you're good at writing or not. You can draw pictures, you can doodle, you can mix abstract symbols, you could physically do something like light a candle and put just words that matter to you. This is not a brand new project per se. It could be a dream you've been working on and incubating, but you might have run into obstacles, right? Because the world keeps changing. Guess what? We're in massive systemic change for the foreseeable future. We're not out of that anytime soon. Anytime. You know, probably another 8 to 10 years of massive systemic change. The world will be very, very different in a decade. And it might be more pleasant. But it's up to us to make that happen. So we need to learn how to be focused, even if you're neurodivergent. Me too. Okay. Why do you think I have to keep remembering to smile? There's no way I could film if I wasn't looking at myself. No way I could film if I wasn't looking at myself because I forget to smile. I have a really deadpan face, or I'm scowling as I try to see. Setting your focus is essential. And that's why we want to handwrite it or use visuals. You could paint it, you could scribble it, you could use dough, okay, to symbolize what matters. It is sextile Uranus. So if it hasn't worked one way, you got to shake up the idea to maybe it needs innovating. Maybe it needs a different route than you thought, because sometimes we think, oh, I need this thing to go a certain way, or I need this kind of help. I remember years and years ago, I had no network. I had been isolated on an island for a very long time, and everything that is now in the ANI process had downloaded over a weekend, and I filled up a 5 subject notebook. This is way back in 2012. And I sat there going, I don't know how to get this out into the world. I don't even know what shape it's going to be. You know, it was crazy. And I was like, I just don't know how this is going to work out. And so I started shaping it. And then I started teaching things as workshops and traveled around the Western states all the way down to Texas to do that, and up and down the coast and I thought, man, I need somebody famous. I need somebody famous to push my work out into the world. And it didn't happen until I didn't need it. Once I didn't need it anymore, a very well-known and famous person found my work and started spreading the word about it. And I laughed, and it happened many, many, many years later. Many years later, like 2020. 8 years later, after I had moved all these things, shoot. Now, my intention, it would be out in the world. And there were all kinds of obstacles to making that happen. All kinds of obstacles to making that happen. It still happened. I was very focused. And I put it down a few times. I'd be like, I don't know how to make this work. I've tried this way. I've tried that way. This door was shut. That door was shut. Okay, well, I'm going to put it down for a minute and I'm going to go do me. Sometimes it was because of my own changes in life. Because guess what? If you want to grow and evolve, things get shaken up. So you're not doing anything wrong when you set an intention or you want to grow and things in your life get shaken up. They have to, because sometimes we're trying to hold on to things that no longer serve their intended purpose in our lives. That can be relationships, it can be jobs, it could be the location where we live, it could be the lifestyle we're living. Who knows? You take the next logical step. If you sit there lamenting the loss, or you over identify with it, or you blame yourself for not being able to hold everything together, you're missing out on the opportunities that your guidance is showing you. While we were living in Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates, I decided to get real serious about my meditating. And I would get up early in the morning around the time of the call to prayer, and I would go onto my balcony and I would meditate. And this one particular time, it would have been around August of 97, I was meditating on my balcony at sunrise, and the sun was not visible from that direction the house was on. So the balcony was not facing east. Okay. And the sun did not shine on that balcony in that way. Okay. Maybe at noon you'd get some sun, but it was very shaded. Okay. Which you want because it's so hot, right? So I was meditating, and light just bathed through my mind's eye, through the third energy center, the ajna, the third eye, and the crown. And I had this understanding of the all that is. And in fact, I wrote it down. We are everything. We are all that is. And I hadn't heard that term. I wasn't in the States. I didn't have access to much when it came to spirituality. I had managed to get into some astrology websites, but that was a really different scene. Okay. It was more analytical. And it wasn't until later that I saw the all that is referenced in other metaphysical books. And I had this sense of oneness. I had this sense of understanding my role in the universe, and one of many, many, many times, because a lot of times, and I was that as well. You know, you get really on your high horse of, I am connected. I know my co-creativity. Let me be the sage. It's a stage. It's a phase. Okay. Just like when kids, learn something, and it's a phase for them, right? When they learn to blow bubbles in their milk, that's the spiritual equivalent. Um, in order for me to meet my purpose, neither that location nor the situation I was in my marriage was conducive to what I'm here to do. And a few short months later, I ended up doing the one thing I really didn't want to do, which was leave. I really wanted to go back to Bahrain. I really didn't want to come back to the States. Really didn't. I knew how hard it would be to raise my children here. And that's the way the cookie crumbled. And it set me on my path. And I got back, so it was August of 98 that I had that visual and that energetical experience, understanding the connectivity of all that is. And in October, being back in the United States, having 7 days to get out from the thought of I need to leave to being back in the States after not having lived here for a decade. In 99, having really bizarre metaphysical experiences and being introduced to many modalities. Um, it was wild. It was wild, including in 98, becoming a professional astrologer. And that wasn't my choice. I had never considered being a professional astrologer. I loved astrology. I found it fascinating. It was a research tool. I was trying to understand human beings and why we do what we do. And no one would hire me. Nobody believed that I had done all the things I did that were on my resume. And so, I was worried because I couldn't find a job that was commensurate with my experience and my qualifications. And my astrology teacher said, put your shingle out there, because I was lamenting. I was like, I'm not coordinated enough to be an exotic dancer. Because I was really thinking, when you got to feed your kids, you got to feed your kids. No harm, no foul, right? And he was like, no, man, I've seen your chart. Go put your shingle out as an astrologer. I told you were born to be an astrologer. And I was like, I don't know that I know enough. And he was like, you know plenty. Go do it. And that's how I started reading charts professionally. It was terrifying. It was terrifying. Because I was busy comparing myself to people with 30 years of experience. Guess what? You cannot compare yourself to someone with 30 years of experience. Not in the least. So when you're taking a path and you are awakened, awakening is the first step. And many of you that listen to this podcast have had that awakening maybe more than one time, because we don't just have one, we have unfoldings, right? The Buddhists describe it as the 10,000 petaled lotus as we unfold. And that means things get shaken up. They do. And with this new moon, those of you who have a calling or have recognized your calling, if you have put parameters that it must be this way, and I have to show up this way, and if it doesn't look like this, it's not the right thing. If you think being awake means that you get absolved from the collective experience, also think again. We aren't above the collective experience. When that collective energy, you're part of the collective. And with Pisces, what can we do? We can transmit as much as we receive. You got a strong Neptune placement. You got planets in Pisces. Your Pisces rising. You can transmit as much as you receive. This whole, I'm an empath. You know what a real empath can do? It can transmit calm and peace. But if you're so selfish that all you think of is your experience and your pain, because you're not really feeling other people's feelings, you're feeling the resonance with your own. And that is why the unhealed need to heal before they move into service, which, guess what? You cannot heal in an environment that continues to wound you. Why am I bringing this up? Because the new moon is sextiled Uranus. And all of humanity is going to get a little bit of an initiation. We're all going to be growing and expanding in some way. You can set your focus on the intention, set the focus on where your calling is. And yes, we can mitigate the experience. We can make it easier on ourselves. But going back to 2016, and no, I'm not talking about the orange one. In my own life, I was making big changes and I was reluctant to make some really uncomfortable choices. And I was really excited about Jupiter coming onto my moon. Okay, I was really excited about that. I was like, oh, Jupiter's going to be conjunct my Libra moon. This is going to be cool. And I had forgotten how close Pluto was to moving into a square with my moon. It was still about 6 degrees out, but Jupiter was on top of my moon. And so Jupiter, what does it do? It magnifies energy. So even though Pluto was 6 degrees away on the approach to the square to my moon, I was feeling it. And things got tighter and more intense and more uncomfortable, and things stopped working. And I wasn't looking that closely at my transits anyway, because I was moving pretty hard. I was trying to get on my feet before I made this big decision. I had started over from nothing before. I didn't want to do it again. I knew what it was like, and nothing I did was working. And one night, I think it was like November or December of 2016, I was sitting there and it was a rainy, rainy night. It was a dark and stormy night. And I could feel this energy. And I was like, gosh, this reminds me of that other time in life. And I was like, that was a Pluto transit. That was a Pluto transit. And I ran to look at my transits and I went, oh God, I missed the approaching square. I hadn't been thinking about it because I was busy. Okay. You'd be like, what kind of astrologer are you? The average kind. Because we're busy looking at everybody else instead of our own. And the minute I saw it, I went, oh God, there's no other choice but to surrender in this moment. It isn't about what other people are going to think of me, of my decisions. They're going to say I'm selfish. They're going to say I'm self-centered. They're going to say I'm unappreciative. They're going to say what kind of woman. All of those things. And I laid on the floor. I really did. I laid on the floor and I put my arms out. I said, I'm just going to have to free fall through this. I have to let it fall away. We're often afraid to do that. We resist it and we fight it. And we're like, no, 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 I can't have this thing go. Guess what? I did have to start over from nothing, but it didn't last very long. And as I reminded myself, the children aren't small, they're grown. I'm not responsible for their survival like I was in 98. And so I had to let it go. Doesn't mean I couldn't participate, didn't mean I couldn't help. I could help as I could, but they also had to grow into their adult beingness. And I probably wouldn't have let go as fast for them to have their experience if I hadn't had that transit. It was rough. Being spiritual does not mean you do not have things to face, but you learn how to let go of the resistance. And it doesn't mean you just let yourself free fall. I don't necessarily recommend that without a great amount of experience in doing so. Don't do it alone. I had a lot of training and a lot of support in that training over the 20 years that I had been back. And so what I'm trying to get with this new moon is if you want an easier experience, as easy as possible, because we will be uncomfortable with these shakeups, but they can be magnificently beautiful. When art is created, it can be a turmoil inside as the artist has the urge to create. The birthing of anything can be tumultuous. If you don't set your intention and focus, or you skimp on yourself, which not focusing is skimping on yourself, giving yourself all the excuses not to do things with your whole chest, trying to keep a foot in both worlds. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to, okay, I'm going to do this calling, but I don't want to let go of this other thing, which served a purpose for a time, but not as long. It was long past its sell by date. Okay. If you're trying to hold on to things that no longer serve, it will get uncomfortable until you let go. And you're like, but Laurie, this isn't a Pluto transit. Nope, it's not. It is the new moon in Pisces in a sextile with Uranus in Taurus. That is innovation. It is inspiration, but it's also shakeups. So there could be shakeups. Now, I'm not saying these are bad, but if you want to see your soul's intent, you can't just sit there complaining. When you're on a spiritual walk, it doesn't have to be a huge drag. But when we set intention, we're committing to something. When we have a path and a calling, we're committing. And maybe you made commitments, and I'm not talking about a marriage or a job or any of that. But if you didn't commit to you, if you committed to what people think, if you committed to opinions, if you committed to society, if you committed to a system that no longer serves, it's not going to work. Be open to inspiration. You can put that as part of your intention. I will hear and pay attention to guidance. But guidance isn't always going to put an eat at Joe's, sign up saying, hey, go here. It doesn't have an exit sign. Like I said, in my experience, it got more and more uncomfortable. Like my mom says, the universe is going to dial up the volume. If you're not paying attention, it's going to get more and more until you take the next step. And it's not about being perfect, and it's not about blaming yourself. I don't blame myself for holding on. I don't. I knew I was in an initiatory moment. I knew I'd worked most of my adult life to have that initiatory moment. I knew the likelihood of it being uncomfortable was there. And I really cared about my adult children, and I cared about my relationship with them. And I knew it could impair that because I was upset in a really big apple cart. And that was okay. That was okay. That was okay. Even if it wasn't for a while, because I knew it would be. When you go to set your intentions with this Pisces new moon, you want to look at where the Pisces new moon at 28 degrees is falling inside your astrology chart. Okay. And I'll go through that in detail in the patron only podcast. Okay. I have videos on my YouTubes, my beginning playlist. And I know you people don't watch them because I can see the numbers. I can see which ones people have watched and which ones people haven't. It is such valuable information. I will not teach a baby beginning, never done it class. I will teach intermediate and up, but I'm not going to teach baby beginning because I've already given you resources. If you can't watch a 7-minute video, a 10-minute video, you don't need to take a class with me because I go from 0 to 60 really fast. Okay. Go watch those. I'll try to remember to link it in the show notes. But come on. And if you're in my Patreon, in fact, even if you're not, I just did a free post and I pinned it with all of the free resources that are available out in the public, as well as the ones that can be purchased, like my flashcards. If you're an astrology crew, you get the flashcards. Okay. They're very cool. All of the community members, $5 level and up, get the ebooks. And they're the ebooks I wished I would have had. I wish I would have had these reference tools when I was just beginning. They're very visual. Okay. Go read those. But if you watch the How to Find Transits video, you'll be able to see where the moon is moving through for the new moon. A lot of times people are confused and think I'm talking about their natal chart. I'm not talking about your natal chart. I'm talking about the current new moon on March 18th. And then you go find where 28 degrees of Pisces is. And if you're in the Patreon, I actually have a How to Find Degrees walkthrough. Even though it's explained in the transit video, you can watch it there too. Okay. These are really important skills if you want to understand astrology. Okay. I didn't make this stuff up. This is not new to me. This is like classical astrology. This is traditional astrology. Okay. Because you got to know that. I have progressed interpretation out of the binary, but the technique is classic. Okay. So there's that. Anyway. So if you're a patron, I'll walk this through. But here's some journal prompts for everybody. All right. To get clear about what's going on with the new moon. I got to move my laptop here so I can see it. And let me magnify so I can read it. So, new moons are for choosing direction. Okay. So, remember, astrology is all about direction and choice, right? It's your astrology chart is a map. This is a good time to commit to habits and systems that support you long term, even if they feel boring at first. So they're not often exciting with a new moon, although this new moon may be a little more exciting than others. Okay. So the new moon is happening at 28 degrees. So you want to find 28 degrees of Pisces in your natal chart, and the moon will be outside of your chart. We're not talking about your natal moon. That's what you're born with. We're talking about the current moon and it activating the spot that has 28 degrees. The degrees don't mean anything specific. It means that it is a more mature expression of the Pisces energy. Okay. And that is spirituality. It's also fear. What do you want to feel? Do you want to empower your fear or do you want to empower your faith? And faith does not require evidence. And it's not the same as belief and dogma. Faith is knowing. It is that connection with your source self. It is that connection with your God, your goddess, the all that is, the cosmos, the quantum. However you view it. I don't care how you describe it. Okay. But that's the spectrum of expression. So if it's falling in the first house, then the question to ask yourself before and just to prepare yourself is, where does the present version of yourself want to go next? Where do I want to go next? What is it I want to do? Where do I want to take myself? Okay. The second house is, what future would make you feel truly secure? And I'm not talking about the world. I'm talking about the future you create. How can you create yourself more security? How can you feel more secure in the inside? How can you imagine it into being? That's another key word for Pisces. Imagination is our greatest tool. The third house, what idea or message keeps returning to mind? What are your guides trying to tell you? Fourth house, what vision of home or belonging feels right to you now? And are you operating there? How do you want to feel? What feels right? Even if it's not there, how do you want to feel? And don't think it's not possible. It is. Fifth house, what creative dream deserves attention? Sixth house, What gentle habit could support your well-being? Seventh house. What relationship needs compassion or forgiveness, especially with yourself? I would also say, what agreements need renegotiating? Eighth house, what emotional pattern is ready for transformation? How can you alchemize things, even if it's something like grief or pain? How can that be alchemized? Ninth house, what belief about your future is ready to expand? 10th house, what dream about your calling or purpose feels possible now? And if it doesn't feel possible yet, what do you want to have feel possible? Like what would like, oh, it's an impossible dream. What if it was possible? What would that feel like? 11th house, what future with others inspires hope? What future with others inspires hope? Stop looking at the dumb bunnies that I almost said a really bad word. Just stop looking at the dumb bunnies that are running things. What collective experience gives you hope? And then the 12th house, what quiet truth is asking to be acknowledged? What quiet truth is asking to be acknowledged? And that's for the new moon. Remember, the outer world can be a shit show and you can still have a great life. I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up. In like a lion, out like a lamb goes the old saying about March. And I'm just going to say it's probably not that simple this month. The tides start to shift in March 2026. Yes, the outer world is still a mess, and how could it be otherwise? Yet our inner worlds, which are our expression into the outer world, have great potential to improve this month if we do the work. I've been saying this for a long time. You must pull your energy inward, not in a self centered kind of way, not in a what about me kind of way, not with greed or selfishness, but rather it's time to withdraw your attention for those who would use it as fuel for destabilization. Yes, they are using it for that. They capture your attention and they use the energy. Your fear, your outrage, your anger, your doubt are all used as fodder to wreck the shared reality. If you didn't have power, influence, and purpose, why would they bother capturing your attention? In March, each of us has the opportunity to hijack the airways, send our signals, and move from consumer to creator. It is both a duty and a privilege to create from our hearts and souls. Our creations might be music, art, uplifting messages, small notes of care, interpretations of joy, beauty, peace, or love. It doesn't have to be soft and ethereal, but it must be authentic to land with strength. Our human vulnerabilities transform into powerfully magnetic clarion calls that blast through the ether, disrupting the shadowy miasma of discontent. Strategies to get you through the month. Tune to your muse. Create with purpose. Creating with purpose isn't about being virtuous or sanctimonious. It's about understanding that creating is the purpose. Now is the time to tune into your muse, find inspiration, and take to social media with your art, your music, your inspiration, and thoughts. If you want to make a difference, there's zero reason to posture, to be in self defense, or to try to wake anyone up. It's time to share what we find beautiful, whether it's a cloud in the shape of a dragon, or a plucky crocus pushing through the aging snow, or dancing like no one is watching. No one is controlling the airways or algorithms so tightly that creativity cannot break through. You want it to be better? Tag. You're it. I don't think it's it this month, but you can start getting your hopes up. Well, that last segment was my thoughts for March from the Awake Space magazine, the March edition, tag you're it, and we need to stop complaining about social media and own the algorithms. We can, because you can train an algorithm, but we've got to support one another. If everybody's just watching the popular people, that's all that's going to be shown. And I actually get a lot of smaller accounts on my FYP because I go around looking for them and dropping a message of encouragement or engaging, because you get what you comment on, you get what you like, you get what you search. Okay. That's how those algorithms work. And so we need other voices being heard. And it's not about waking people up. They wake up or they don't. That's not on you. But share what you want to see more of in the world. If you don't like the books that are out there, write the book you want to read. If you don't like the TV out there, make a web series. If you don't like the podcast you're listening to, make a podcast, but get out of your own way. And this new moon has the opportunity to help shake up those old thought forms that we have, that we're not big enough. We need something bigger than we are to help us out, or someone bigger than we are to help us out. That energy doesn't help you. There's a time you have to go into something that's uncomfortable in order to grow. It's not comfy being born. It's a rude thing to come out of a warm and cushy womb into a cold world and then realize you are not part of the thing that from which you came. That's disconcerting. Life on this planet isn't meant to be super smooth or perfect. We have these unattainable standards we put upon ourselves that stop us from taking action. And it's oppressive. If we want liberation, we have to bring it to ourselves. We've said it. All of us metaphysicians, all of us people in the spiritual community, the real ones, have been saying, no one's coming to save you. We've been saying it for years. That means you save you. You rescue you. And you do it by joining together with like-hearted people. I've said it over and over till I'm blue in the face, and I will keep saying it till I am purple. Because that's what it takes. And that is what we're capable of. With that in mind, I want to remind you about March. Now, there's been some interesting rumors about Netanyahu, and I can't confirm because you don't really see it in a natal chart. There was some stress to his physicality, but we already know he's being treated for cancer. So that's not neither here nor there. But it might be possible. Why can't an astrologer see the demise of a person? Sometimes we can. It's very, very rare. And usually historical figures, where we know the history and we could go, oh, that's kind of it. But there isn't a singular planetary aspect that is assured. I know the internet loves to go, those eighth house transits. Eighth house does not show your own demise. It shows your attitude to losing other people or facing big changes or challenges. It is where you alchemize from life events. It's gritty, but it can be profoundly beautiful. But it is not your own demise. So, again, the big idea for March, which I gave 2 weeks ago at the beginning of March, but I'm going to give it again because there's new listeners and there's a lot that's going on. So, we're going to do a refresher from my 2026 predictions and preparation. Remember, I sandwiched the predictions between the big idea and the preparation information. So, and if you're at the magazine level and up, you all have access to this now through the shop. It is part of your perks as being a community member. So let's look at this. Master timing. It's about timing. Well-timed action outperforms force. And I think that's a really interesting thing that I wrote there, because I wrote this back in June of 2025, completely out of context. That's why I do the event around the solstice, and we will be doing 2027. I have no context at all for what's coming. So I'm just focusing on the astrological energy that I am seeing in the transits. And so well timed action outperforms force. So we need to be strategic in March. Let clarity determine movement. So winging it doesn't work. You got to have clarity to take action. Practice waiting without self doubt. Sometimes we have to put things on hold. It doesn't mean it's never happening, but if things are all wibbly wobbly and falling apart, it might not be the time to take big, bold action yet. Yet. Doesn't mean it won't be there. And then commit only when alignment is present. Don't just say yes to keep the peace. Don't just acquiesce and give up because somebody won't stop pushing. Okay? Don't do that. If you know what's right for you, then that's it. Now, the thing I think very interesting and why I said it could be true, could be. It's not a for sure. Do not go around saying, Laurie said it was this, because I'm not. And I know I'm going to get the comments teasing me. Mid-March sees the fall of at least one regime in the world. Now, remember, I wrote this in June of 2025. We could see Israel's government change significantly. Notice I didn't mention anything about any particular person, but I said the government could change significantly. Could is conditional. It isn't for sure. I said that's within the realm of possibility. We could also see conflicts escalate with the use of drones, missiles, and potential use of irradiated materials. Irradiated materials does not mean the atom bomb. It means things like depleted uranium shells and maybe a tactical weapon. The end of March is extremely wet globally. Could see precipitation in areas that don't normally see it, such as deserts. This is global, but looking at Death Valley, Mojave, Gobi, eastern China, into the Arabian Peninsula, even the Sahara, etc. We could see issues with religious figures, religious artifacts, historical buildings, and archaeological sites. That could be both bad and good. Okay, there could be interesting news come up. There's been a lot of very interesting archaeology. At the end of March is very litigious. That means there's a lot of legal action going on. We could see international courts busy, borders catch fire, and that could be between states as well as countries, or are breached. International agreements are breached, reworked, or new agreements of significance are made. End of March. Could see a good deal of notable figures pass away from mid to the end of March. And notable means politicians, celebrities, etc. We've been losing a lot of the elder celebrities, elder statespeople are up. And no, I don't know who. I'm not looking at a million charts. I don't think people realize I don't sit here going, it means I have to look at the charts. And to do this, just what you got, took hundreds of charts. I looked at many, 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 many till I was cross-eyed. We could see, let's see, problems with film production, movie studios, independent music, and film are taking off. We could see new faces and projects develop on new platforms. Thought it was interesting. It's a new form of something older, which is the Firefly announcement that happened. And if you're a fan of the show Firefly, then they're going to do an animated version. And so that's a new project, and they're leveraging their fan base, trying to get it out there. So there is that. What I had for preparation, just to give you guys the clue, and this week we're really seeing it. Prepare for unseasonable temperatures. Could be another stretched out winter. Food costs could continue to rise. Having indoor gardening, hydroponic is a good plan, especially leafy greens and herbs. As always, have alternative light and heat sources in case of power outages, especially where the weather is severe. Always have a go bag and ensure all paperwork is in waterproof folders or bags. Remember supplies for children and pets. Shop the sales. Don't forget to have board or card games or crafting supplies on hand to use in power outages. The worst thing you can do in emergencies is whine and complain and panic. And I say that not as a judgment, but because I've lived through some. I've lived for 2 weeks without power with small children and a Labrador back in the day. And if it was just me, because my then spouse was out dealing with the emergency, we did fine because I kept it lighthearted. Yeah, it was uncomfortable, but everybody was uncomfortable. So I tried to keep the mood as light as possible. And the year that he wasn't out in it, and he just wouldn't stop complaining. And it made it worse and worse and worse, and the energy just got heavy. And honestly, at that time, it just broke something in me. It just was terrible. And granted, that was many years ago, and I was still in my healing process. And I say, hey, can you tone it down? Everybody's uncomfortable. Try to make it as comfortable as possible. Sometimes that's hard to do. Okay, I'm not saying skip to the loo and pretend nothing's going on, but try to keep it as light as you can, depending on your circumstances. And then don't obsess over things outside of your control. If you can't do anything about it, you can't do anything about it. It's not about, oh, I'm going to give up. It's more like I can take care of what I can take care of and leave it there. Have hands on projects that require some kind of focus to absorb your mental and emotional energy as we move through March. And that's something you can do now, whether it's diamond painting or baking, if you can. Not everybody's going to be impacted by the same things. So that is something we've got. It's a busy week, Again, we've got the new moon on the 18th, and we've got Venus square Jupiter and the sun sextiled Uranus, which is sextiled the new moon, So it's an interesting day. We might see some interesting economic news, projections and things. Just hold steady as much as you can and really pay attention to that new moon information. March 20th is the spring equinox. The sun enters Aries and the quality of energy really starts to shift, and then Mercury stations for direct motion on the 20th. So that's going to be interesting. The 21st, we have Mars trine Jupiter, and that is next Monday. There could be significant events with that. That's some big, bold action. When it comes to our own leadership, the commander in chief is looking at a really rough week from the 21st on. March is not a good month for that particular person, and March 30th is going to be a little rough for them because Mars will be in a square with his sun. And now, if Mars is square your sun, this is not the same thing. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about him in particular. We already know his health isn't good. It is not going to improve. Modern medicine has slowed things down, but he's not faring well. Is it? I can't tell you that. I can't tell you if it's it or not. And I've held by that. I have never seen jail time. I have always seen debilitating health. He's being propped up right now. I think that's apparently obvious. And it's also apparently obvious he's not making final calls. What I will say is if this is in the first slide for April for the predictions, if Donald Trump is still president, he is struggling with his health and has very little support left in the first week of April. I'm going to say that's probably because of what happens when Mars is trine Jupiter. I know a lot of astrologers are like, trines are benefic. Trines are unrestricted energy, and we have a war going on right now. So this is big bada boom. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't freak out too much about what's happening here. His administration is definitely making decisions that are unwise for global security as much as American security. So We'll see how that plays out. Remember, the future isn't set in stone. It's a tree with many branches. I look at the possibility and the probability. I'm very sure and very certain there's a very explosive event on the 21st. What that looks like could be an underwater volcano. It could be a lot of things. It probably has to do with water, though. There's probably water involved. It could be Navy stuff, Marines. Mars deals with war at the lowest expression, at the denser expression of that energy. So we'll see. But you personally can be very energized and infused with energy and very connected to guidance and do some incredible things, make some incredible things. There's no reason for you to necessarily have a bad day. I wrote up something about California, and it's a free post. I'll try to remember to get that in the show notes. What do the stars say about the intel? Okay. And you can head over, but I'll just give you some important dates. So on March 11th, the FBI gave a warning that they had intelligence that there was a credible threat from Iran to use drones on strategic sites in California. And I linked an article from CBS there. Thanks to Mercury retrograde, I had a rough time with tech during the live deep dive that I did on it. So I promised to write an article, and I did. The chart below that I use, or the chart that I'm working with, is the California Constitution. It was done a year before it was admitted into the Union, but the Constitution itself formed the state of California. And interestingly, on the 13th of March, 2026, California, the Constitution, had its fifth Saturn return. Now, Saturn returns aren't necessarily bad. I'm going to read a little bit from that. And it's funny, I just wrote the same thing I just said. Now, Saturn returns are not inherently bad. They are the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one for entities, be they human or mundane. I have a Saturn return video that's free if you want to know when you're in your Saturn return and what Saturn returns are. You can check that out. The Saturn return chart for the state of California's constitution shows the beginning of a 28.5-year cycle where there's a push to show up as sovereign. Now, I don't think we're going to see balkanization, but I do think we're going to see pushback against the federal government, even more so than Newsom has done. We might see push me, pull you over some years. And I've got some dates to look out for. So let's see, I had March 15th. It wasn't a for sure. None of these are for sure. It just could be events. It could be wildfires as much as anything else, and not caused by anything nefarious other than the weather. There could be shocking events on this date on March 24th. Though I doubt it's a drone, it's likely a venture capital bank or something with a large company. It could be Google in San Francisco. It could be an award of a contract as much as unstable economic news. April 11th. This is a potential date that if there was a strike, it could be it. Is it a for sure? No, it's not. It's not a guarantee. It's just I'm looking. Those are contentious days for the entity known as California. Again, it could be weather. It could be lightning. It could be a million things. If something does happen, people will know. They'll be like, nah, that's because it ain't coming from where they say it's going to come. It could be any number of things ranging from storms, wildfires, or the refusal to hand over taxes to the federal government without condition. And then April 30th, there is another date, and that's transit Mercury in Aries conjunct the natal Uranus of the California Constitution. It could see big headlines. And if there's some kind of issue with projectiles, planes, or incendiary devices, could, not will. These are just potentials. Doesn't mean it's a guarantee. I'm emphasizing that you might be like, okay, Laurie, I get it, but here's the deal. If I don't drive it home, people run with it and say, you said, no, it's potentials. May 11th is another date And I said transit Mars in Aries, square Jupiter in Cancer. The whole world is looking at the aftermath of economic impact of an ill thought out war in the Middle East. This impacts California in significant ways, could see issues with transportation, could be gas prices, could be a million different things. However, it could also be civil unrest. If there's a false flag event or explosion of some kind, that could be a day for it. If it's drones, it's a false flag and it will not be accepted as anything else. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not. I'm saying if it were to happen, people aren't going to buy into it. It is a very contentious day though. And again, it could be wildfires. It could be a lot of things. And with the temperatures going on right now, and we're going to see them really rise at the end of April. I'm sorry, California. I know you're hot already, but I think we see some significant heat indexes as we go into the end of April, mid to end, into May. May 16th is another date. Okay. So you guys can go read that for yourself over at the Awake Space /Patreon. It is there available for everybody. You can check out the astrology for the new paradigm, free resources to get you started. If you don't want to read my story, you can just scroll down and there's a bunch of links there to free resources to help you understand your astrology chart. Okay. Oh, it's a crazy time on the planet. It really is. I know how hard it is. It's hard for everyone. And if you've just woken up, if you've just become aware, I don't care how old you are, it is a very disconcerting experience. If you've been aware for a while, then you feel it keenly as well. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself and listen to your guidance. All right, that's it. That's all we got because I'm running late and it's early hours of Monday morning and I want to get this out and still have to do what's in the headlines for the magazine subscribers and up. That comes out on Mondays as well. And if you're a stargazer, if you're one of the $5 supporters, you get that on Tuesdays. All righty. Have a great week. And you really can, regardless of outer circumstances. See you in the studio next week.